Jason calls in the studio. He's a congressional candidate in Washington's 2nd District. Jason, welcome to the program, brother.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, so Jason, we already have a Democrat in the district that you're running in.
No, we don't. But go ahead.
Okay, all right, what's the situation? Who's the incumbent?
His name's Rick Larsen. He's been there for 20 years. I believe he's running for his 11th term. He's a very conservative Democrat. He's part of this New Democrat coalition. He takes a ton of corporate PAC money from the industries that are killing the planet and killing the economy. And I think people are really ready to see change.
Well, look, I hear from Washington media and Washington Democrats that money doesn't corrupt people, and that those corporations are giving for their health and for your health.
Right.
So I'm sure that's how much money has he taken?
Over the 20 years, he's taken $14.5 million over 20 years, and 75% of that has been corporate PAC money.
Okay, but those corporations, they're probably giving it to him. What do you think? Was it for charity?
Well, I think they want to give him charity. I think they want to see him reelected, but they're not doing it for the constituents of the district, no.
Yeah, because there's one thing about corporations, they don't care about making money at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, they've never cared about it, and so that's why they give $14.5 million to Democrats. Now, are you going to sit here and tell me that he sometimes voted with those corporations?
He has more than sometimes voted with those corporations. In fact, many of the votes that he has taken that I'm trying to hold him accountable for actually were with the Republicans when the Democrats actually opposed. For instance, he's working on deregulating the banks. He's voted in favor of the wealthy on estate tax issues. The corporations are getting their money's worth out of purchasing his seat.
Okay, so Jason, then let's come to you. First, what's your story? So the rest of the media would say, this guy's not a politician, you were done with him, right? Okay, so what are you?
Well, I've been essentially a street activist for 30 years. I got my involvement in politics when I was 19 years old at the University of Washington when we invaded Iraq the first time. I've been an anti-war activist for that long. When the Bernie movement got going in 2015, as somebody who had followed Bernie on Brunch with Bernie with Thom Hartmann for a long time, I was really ready to jump into the fight with Bernie. I realized with a number of other progressives in Washington State what we needed to do to kind of take over the Democratic Party. So we really pushed progressives filing for that local grassroots PCO office, and we ended up taken over some leadership positions in Washington State. I got myself elected to the Washington State Democrats Central Committee, where I've been there pushing progressive resolutions and platform issues and essentially fighting the establishment at the state party level. Part of my fight there has been to identify to the state Democratic Party that while our platform is extremely progressive, and I know because I helped write a lot of it, that we do not have the progressive representation that is willing to stand up for that platform, and it's really time to demand better. So the tagline for my campaign is demand better. We can do a whole lot better in Washington State than Rick Larsen. And I have to say that we have 6 out of our 7 House representatives in Washington State that are not progressive. I mean, really the only progressive we have representing us in Washington State is Pramila Jayapal. And we've got to do better to represent our platform.
Yeah, so since you're part of the Central Committee and in that sense part of the Democratic Party in Washington, what's been your experience with those representatives? So if the Democratic Party and the Central Committee goes to them and maybe like beseeches them or gives them facts and logic or says, hey, look, here's where our platform is or here's where the voters are, does that tend to work?
Well, the thing is, our current Democratic Party leadership is essentially an arm of the DNC. And so our current Democratic Party leadership is quite happy to continue supporting these right-wing politicians. They are definitely playing the money game. They are not happy with somebody like me that is continually trying to hold them accountable to the platform. And so really the state party chair in Washington is already on the stump for Rick Larsen. That's what grassroots people running for office have to contend with. The state parties are typically establishment, and we've been trying to get progressives to file for this PCO office so we continue to make inroads in terms of taking over the party. People don't like that aggressive term, but I feel that's what needs to happen. So I'm not going to get any help from the establishment. That's just the way it goes.
I don't know what people want. Like, okay, let's not take over the party and do what? Do pretty please for 20 straight years?
Yeah.
Like, we've already done it for 40 years. It hasn't worked. What do you think? Another 40 years of pretty please is going to work?
Well, they're really more concerned with winning with a D behind that name rather than having that D actually stand for something.
Yeah. But look, this district is purple or red, right? I mean, that's why you need a conservative Democrat in there.
No, it's a blue district.
Really?
We are a +10 blue district. Rick Larson's only serious challenge came back in 2010 with a Republican, and he still won the district by 10 points.
Yeah. Okay, they have no excuse. They just say they're hooked on the money. So. Now let's talk about your planks. Okay, by the way, if you want to find out more, callforcongress.com, which is kind of a fun website. Your last name happens to be Call. It's pretty neat. I guess you're answering the call.
I am answering the call.
Yeah, okay, so what do you got? What's your top priorities?
Top priorities are Medicare for all, Green New Deal, getting money out of politics, stopping the forever wars. I mean, the list goes on. It's really hard to choose a top priority, but I'm a board member of an activist group in Washington called Whole Washington, and we are trying to bring single payer healthcare to Washington state. I want to plug wholewashington.org if people want to help out that effort. But if we cannot get Medicare for all on federal level, we want to make sure we get it on the state level, and then once people see that single payer does work on a state level, then hopefully it will expand to the federal level. So that's been a top issue for me. You know, I have a personal story with my mother. My mother went through essentially a botched surgery, and the insurance companies did not let her stay more than a single day in the hospital. She went home and had some critical effects from that surgery that put her back in the hospital for 2 years, and she spent the rest of her life. She died in 2014 after spending 10 years on a walker. And if the insurance companies had just let her stay in the hospital for a couple of days longer, they would have caught the issue that had gone bad, and it would have saved her health for the rest of her life. But it would have also saved them a ton of money, because they ended up having to pay out for 10 years of, you know, multiple surgeries beyond that. And so we have an incredibly dysfunctional healthcare system, and I believe Medicare for all is the answer to that.
But Jason, when you go into Congress, Nancy Pelosi is going to say, I don't care for Medicare for all, and I'm the leader. And Jason, if you go around asking for a vote on it, forget winning, even asking for a vote, if you dare to do that, you'll be hurting your colleagues in the purple districts. We need them for the majority. And so they don't want to vote for Medicare for all because they'll be embarrassed. So Jason, don't hurt your colleagues. And if you do, you're a bad person. What do you say?
Well, I do not believe that the right-wing Democrats like Nancy Pelosi are representing their constituents, whether their constituents are conservative or liberal. I think the polling shows that all people will benefit from a Medicare for all system, and most Democrats and a majority of Republicans are supportive of it. And so when the establishment Democrats come back with those kind of responses, you know, what I would say is, well, that's the money talking. You know?
Yeah. How dare you? So you also talk about firearms in your literature and proposals. So
Sure.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I do believe that we need stronger firearms controls. My platform committee in 2018 wrote what is now on the books, as we call it, the Reasonable Firearms Control Resolution. The one part of that we tried to get into the resolution was insurance, and it turns out that no insurance company will insure homeowners for gun liability. So that just tells you right there that the insurance companies know how dangerous firearms are. But I don't believe that anybody needs weapons of war as personal toys. So I would seek an outright ban on AR-15, AK-47 style guns. I'm not trying to take away anybody's home pistol. Even though we know that most of the gun deaths come from revolver type guns and a lot of them are suicides, I think what goes along with that is better mental health services to help people who are struggling. That's really, guns are a tough issue because people want to fall back on the Second Amendment, but I do believe the Second Amendment needs some updating and revision for the modern age. And I think if that means that we've got to take away these weapons, essentially weapons of mass destruction that are in personal hands. But I would also add to that, I think we need to demilitarize the police. I think a lot of the pushback on that is, well, if the police have these guns, I need these kind of guns for my home defense, and I think that we should just wipe them out completely.
Yeah, so look, I think the Second Amendment needs an update too. I mean, I think that if it says you have a right to bear arms, it should at least be part of a well-regulated militia.
Right, which we already have.
Oh, right, that is the Second Amendment. Oh, and none of you are in a well-regulated militia, but anyway. Jason Call, running in Washington's 2nd District, call for Congress.com, and the Democratic Party establishment will not answer the call. Big corporate PACs will not answer the call, so that leaves you guys. So call for Congress.com. Thank you for coming in, Jason.
Appreciate it very much, Cenk. Thank you.
No problem.